Now, it's going to bring me to my very last question for today. When it comes to African literature, there's some sort of gatekeeping in what should be African literature.
Is there?
I think there is, isn't there? I mean, the question is, there is, isn't there? Shouldn't there be because I think that, or I perceive that there's some sort of gatekeeping, maybe not in Africa, but also in the wider world, in the scope that they look at us from, the lens that they look at from. And with the diversity that comes out, do you think that it sort of puts a limitation or sort of put writers in a box when they're writing? You think there's no gatekeeping, so I'm going to start with you.
I mean, it's a question though. Ultimately, gatekeeping, is there gatekeeping? It's on so many levels because I think, first of all, we even gatekeep ourselves here because I know I've had more issues about Nigerian English and Pidgin English with Nigerian editors than white editors. White editors are always like, okay, this is what you mean, okay, high school, let's go. But Nigerian editors would want me to put a glossary or italicize Nigerian English or Pidgin English.
Or even the language itself.
Or even language itself. So I would even say, if there is, I would say it starts from us, but on a level of category, there's the whole thing of the trying to get your work to the West or elsewhere, and there have been multiple people have talked about issues. Maybe Chimeka would have more experience to talk about his experience.
The only person everyone seems to be referring back to. Chimeka, what is going on? What is this thing that keeps coming back to you?
I have no idea. So maybe Chimeka will give us.
Chimeka the baton keeps coming back to you.
So I'm not sure. I'm not sure it's so much gatekeeping as it's more like gatekeeping is like, okay, maybe like there's certain people or certain narratives that
coming out of Africa.
Yes, but I think there's a certain expectation for what an African writer is. You understand? So back in Achebe's time and all them people, it was like, oh, there's this. The writing was very political, like talking about colonialism and all that. So African writers are expected. Sort of some of that expectation still comes out still today.
But don't you think that writing was the experience that informed?
Yeah, it was the experience, but even till today, they still kind of expect you to write something a bit political or social, you understand? So, I was somewhere recently, and they asked, there was at the book festival recently, and they all asked us the same question. We're all African writers, and I was happy that everybody said, look, I want to write anything I want to, so you won't see, for example, specifically now, you won't see the West give props to an African romance writer. And there are African romance writers here, and in terms of readership, the people who read more books, in terms of genres and readership numbers and all that, romance is big, but you wouldn't see them give props to that. Or they want us to write a certain kind of way. Leia Denley, he writes crime fiction, and it's like, look, crime is what it is. I'm not going to. There was they asked, oh, what are you writing? All that, and he's a bit of a joker, and he's like, I'm writing for money. You understand? He just said it. So you people should know that. Look, because just like everywhere in the world, we're diverse. We have different interests. I don't see anybody asking E.L. James what she thinks about. Is she English or American? I don't see anybody asking her what she thinks about Boris Johnson. Understand? She wrote 50 Shades of Grey. Nobody's asking about COVID policy. Nobody's asking about anything, any of those things. 50 Shades of Grey, sex. We deal with it. That is it. So I want, so I think that is more, for me, my experience, that is more of the thing people want African writers to write in a particular. People outsiders expect us to write in a particular way, and, the more people who don't write, the more people write romance, the more people write magical realism, the sci-fi stuff, the more people write things that are off the expected track, the better for me. Understand?
Do you think that the reception towards your own YA would be? Because there are not so many, I would say there are many, but not so many with so much focus in terms of like media and when it comes to YA, young adult books as well.
Personally, this issue of gatekeeping and certain narratives that should be African, I have been a victim, like a victim right from the start. At a point, I felt my own kind of writing was useless because it wasn't just the whites, even the Nigerians themselves. I know, like we're talking about workshops, I was like, I think I've lost count of the number of workshops I've applied for because of my kind of writing. I mean, it never really moves anyone. Everybody's looking for the story of the guy that committed suicide or the heartless father, a story that makes them sad.
Or as a friend likes to call it, poverty porn.
Exactly. So if they don't see any of those, it's more like, what are you trying to tell us? They kiss somebody. That is where it ended. How is this African in any way? You're not cultural. So it has never. I have always been a victim of that. I think there were times I was tempted to, at a point I was even advised to start writing the African narrative, and then when I was advised to start writing the African narrative, and then when I eventually came out to the limelight, I should then stick to what I normally do best. And obviously I'm one person who loves being honest with herself, and I couldn't do it. My way of coping and learning to enjoy what I write was I stopped applying for workshops. I stopped applying for anything. I stopped going for competitions. Because I think there was a point I had to start writing, and I'll be reading sad stories and writing, and I'm like, what is this? But then I have to keep writing it because it's more like, this is what is acceptable. I remember there was this stuff I had with a white stuff. I think I had to make the story sad. The woman was pregnant and she lost her son and lost her baby. And they picked the story. And I was but then, when I'm trying to be myself and like, in a whole chapter like this, I'm already putting you in suspense. You don't even see the end coming. But you don't value it because you're not crying at the end of the book. So I've been a major victim of this, and I feel this limitation should not be put on writers. It should not. I mean, people should be allowed to express themselves the way they want to express themselves. They shouldn't be tied to we know Africa to be this, so you have to write this, you have to write that. If you're not writing, you're trying to form what you're not. I've seen people tell me I'm forming what I'm not by being a mystery writer, because you hear your story doesn't even, where does this happen in Nigeria? Where does this? And I'm like, okay, the white movies you watch, where do you think it happens there? Like, these people create these things and then you watch them and you like them. Why can't we create our own? Like, I was really bent on bringing out this mystery. Like, we are going to have African mystery, and one promise I made to myself, I'm just going out a bit, one promise I made to myself was, if I ever had a chance to come out with my kind of writing, I would seek out writers like myself, because I know what I went through. I would seek out writers like myself and make sure the world sees how awesome we are. Exactly.
Well, Bina.
I think definitely, there's the pressure to funnel your story along a particular path. For example, with my book, I've heard comments for those, it's not like, for those who know what the book is about, they're kind of like, well, you're writing about rich people. And it's almost like, you can't be talking about rich people in Nigeria, you should be talking about poverty, you should be talking about corruption, you should be talking about Yahoo, you should be talking about, and I'm like, but there are rich people in Nigeria though. Do you understand? Like, yes, there are poor people and there are rich people, and someone ought to write about the rich people, and I have in this book opted to write about some rich people. It's not like it's all about that, but it's just kind of like showing how rich Nigerians live. So it just shows you the objection to going off the beaten path, like Chimeka said. But then on the flip side, I think there's some responsibility that we have. Perhaps not a responsibility, but there's just something to think about. And I think my editor did a little bit of that with me when we were working on this work. She would question certain things that I put in there and say, are you sure you're not trying to feed into the narrative that XYZ about Nigerians or XYZ about people. And it just got me thinking, because she just wanted me to make a choice in terms of, is this a narrative you want to, is that what you're trying to say? Are you comfortable with it? So it just got me questioning myself. So it's things like, she was like, you know, if you are writing and you're saying this person is spectacularly beautiful because the person is a mulatto, for example, are you buying into that conversation or that narrative that, oh, because she's a mulatto, she's much more pretty.
Because she's biracial.
Exactly.
She has more lighter skin.
Do you understand? And so it was a question, and then I had to pause, ask myself, and I realized that wasn't the reason. And so I like the fact that it was a question that was asked, because I think that readers might think about it that way. It wasn't the reason why this person was cast in that light, and so I was comfortable with it. But I just liked the pushing me to think about what was the underpinning rationale for doing that. And there were several other examples along the way. So that's why I say I don't know if it's a responsibility per se, but it's good to ask yourself, are you just, because sometimes unconsciously you might just be falling into the narrative of this is how African books read, this is how Nigeria is, so let me toe the line to sound authentic. When I think, the beauty of what Chimamanda said around the danger of a single story is, I think it is great when you don't tell the single story. If you can, show other aspects, show other facets of your society, of living in whatever plot you have going. So I think that's important.
You do that with your book as well, give different perspectives so well.
Yes, but I was going to say that we all kind of gatekeep. So I wouldn't necessarily say it's the Western world that does that to us, because even us as Africans, we do it to ourselves. You see somebody who is maybe, please don't come for me before you watch this, but like when you see someone that is, maybe she says, oh, she's Yoruba, but she doesn't have a certain look. You're like, you don't look Yoruba. What does Yoruba look like? Because in your mind, you've created a reality of what a Yoruba person or an Igbo person looks like, or what an Hausa person should look like. I'm this, or when we gatekeep, we do that every time. I always say that Nigerians, we do that to ourselves. Africans, we do that to ourselves. Not now, we have a situation whereby we have even the Ghanaian jollof rice and the Nigerian jollof rice. So what I've seen from listening to all of you is, I know that we're all trying to say there's no responsibility on us as writers, as to be gatekeepers, but I kind of disagree. I think that it's your job as a writer to be a gatekeeper, but gatekeep objectively and tell the truth in a way that people can see Africa or see. So what Miracle is doing is she's telling stories. She's an African writer, but she's telling this, this mystery stories. Whether we like it or not, there's an African imprint in it. I'm sharing my stories, my short stories. I'm African, I'm Nigerian, I'm Yoruba. All these influences will show in my writing, and I shouldn't be afraid to show it. So whether I'm telling the story of love, of joy, of happiness, or whatever, I should gatekeep, because how else are people going to know about this world of mine if I don't write about it? How are you going to know that women are dating madmen in Lagos if I don't write about it? And then how are you going to read it in London and be white and be like, oh, so there are mad people in Lagos too? You see? Because you read something similar. So you should gatekeep. You should just not, as much as you're gatekeeping, try to show Africa in the best way. Even if you have to tell the truth, at the end of the day, try to portray us in the best light. So I think that's what we should do as writers.
Well, thank you guys so much for joining me today on this roundtable. It was quite the insightful and interesting and wonderful conversation, right? Was it, Chimeka?
It was.
I think Chimeka should go around and just sign autographs for every single one before he leaves. Well, make sure to get every book from Masobe's website. That is www.masobebooks.com. Thank you for watching.